Her name was Barbara, and for most of her early life, she looked like a completely ordinary person. She did not grow up surrounded by wealth, opportunity, or financial comfort, and nothing about her childhood suggested she would one day build serious wealth through real estate. Barbara grew up in a struggling household with many siblings where money was always tight and every expense mattered. The family lived in a small apartment and life was simple, sometimes stressful, and often uncertain when it came to finances. From a young age, she understood what financial pressure looked like because she had saw it every day at home. Bills had to be managed carefully, spending had to be controlled, and nothing could be wasted. Those early experiences shaped the way Barbara thought about money and survival. She realized very early that if she wanted a different future, she would have to build it herself because no one was going to hand it to her. When she became an adult, she entered the workforce like millions of other people trying to make a living and slowly finding stability. Her early jobs were simple and paid very little. Over time, she worked more than 20 different jobs, including being a waitress, receptionist, and office assistant, most of them paying close to minimum wage. These were not glamorous positions, and they did not provide financial security. From the outside, her life looked predictable and ordinary. She woke up, went to work, earned just enough to cover basic expenses, and repeated the same cycle week after week, like most working adults. Anyone observing her life from the outside would assume she was simply another person trying to survive on a modest income. But while working those jobs, Barbara started noticing something interesting about the people who seemed to be doing better financially. Many of them were not necessarily the smartest people she had met, and they were not always the hardest workers either. What made them different was that they owned things. They owned businesses, assets, and property that produced income even when they were not actively working. That observation stayed in her mind and slowly changed the way she looked at money and opportunity. She began paying closer attention to how ownership worked and why some people seemed to move forward financially while others remained stuck in the same cycle of working only for their paycheck. Eventually, Barbara found herself close enough to the world of real estate to see something that completely changed her perspective. She realized that salary pays you once, but a property can generate income repeatedly over long periods of time. That simple realization became the foundation of her strategy. If she could find a way to own property, then the money she earned from working could start building something larger than just a paycheck. The problem was, she didn't have a wealthy family, large savings, or investors waiting to support her. She had to start with very little and move forward carefully. Barbara began saving as much money as she possibly could. It was not fast and it was not dramatic. She simply became disciplined with the money she earned and avoided unnecessary spending whenever possible. Dollar by dollar, she slowly built enough savings to consider her first opportunity. When she finally stepped into real estate, she did not start with something impressive. Her first property was modest, simple, and far from luxurious. It was not the type of investment people brag about. However, it had something extremely important that most purchases do not have. It had the ability to generate income. Once that first property started producing income, Barbara made a decision that would shape the rest of her financial life. Instead of spending the money she earned from the property, she reinvested it. The income helped her save faster and eventually allowed her to move toward acquiring another property. One property slowly turned into two, and two eventually turned into several. Every time the portfolio grew, it created more income, and that income helped her create the next opportunity. The system began working slowly, but consistently. Barbara stayed focused on this strategy for years. She continued working, continued saving, and continued reinvesting. While many people around her were chasing fast money or looking for shortcuts, she was quietly repeating the same process again and again. She purchased modest properties that could be rented, improved their value when possible, and used the income they generated to strengthen her financial position. Over time, the properties began supporting each other financially. Rental income from several properties helped make future investments easier, and the value of those properties increased gradually as the years passed. From the outside, Barbara still looked like a completely normal person. She did not suddenly change her lifestyle, and she did not begin living in a flashy way that would attract attention. She continued living relatively simply, which meant most people around her had no idea what she had been building quietly in the background. The system she created kept expanding year after year as time multiplied the results of her decisions. Real estate markets slowly increased in value, and the rental income from her properties provided steady financial support for additional investments. Eventually, something remarkable became clear. The woman who had once worked low-paying jobs and looked like any other ordinary worker had built a real estate portfolio that most would consider impossible starting from such a modest position. Property after property had been added to the portfolio over many years of discipline and patience. The number continued to grow until Barbara eventually owned 27 properties. 27 different properties built step by step, starting from small income, small opportunities, and consistent decisions. Her story showed that wealth does not always begin with a huge salary, powerful connections, or a lucky break. Sometimes it begins with observation, discipline, and the willingness to repeat a single strategy for many years. Barbara did not go and try and look rich. She did not chase the appearance of success. Instead, she focused on building assets that could produce income and grow in value over time. While many people spend their lives chasing higher paychecks, she quietly focused on ownership. By the time people had realized what she had built, she had already created something extraordinary, starting from almost nothing. Her journey proves that even someone working modest jobs can slowly build real wealth if they understand the power of assets and remain consistent long enough for time to multiply their efforts. This is Ronald Reed, born October 23, 1921, in Dummerston, Vermont, into a poor farming family. He was the first in his family to graduate high school, walking or hitchhiking 4 miles every single day just to get there. When World War II began, he enlisted in the United States Army. He served as a military policeman in North Africa, Italy, and the Pacific. In 1945, he returned home, honorably discharged, with no fame, no fortune, just discipline and quiet determination. Back in Vermont, Ronald worked for 25 years as a gas station attendant and mechanic at his brother's service station. He never earned more than about $20,000 to $25,000 per year. After briefly retiring, he realized that he hated doing nothing, so he went back to work, this time as a part-time janitor at JCPenney. He worked there another 17 years until age 76. He lived ultra-frugally. He wore the same old khaki jacket held together by safety pins. He cut his own firewood well into his 90s. He drove a beat-up Toyota Yaris and parked far away to avoid parking meters. He ate cheap muffins and coffee at the local hospital almost daily. Someone once bought him breakfast, thinking he was homeless. No vacations, no fancy clothes, no waste. But here's what no one knew. Right after the war, Ronald began investing, self-taught, reading the Wall Street Journal and Barron's at the public library. He bought shares in companies he understood. Solid dividend-paying blue chips, Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, J.P. Morgan, General Electric, Dow Chemical, CVS, Colgate, Palmolive, Wells Fargo, American Express, utilities, and railroads. He avoided anything complicated. If he didn't understand it, he didn't buy it. He owned at least 95 different stocks for diversification. His strategy was simple: buy and hold forever. Reinvest every dividend. Never panic. Never chase trends. He even owned Lehman Brothers when it collapsed in 2008. But because he was diversified, the damage was small. He kept his investments as physical stock certificates, stacked in a safe deposit box, a pile about 5 inches high. On June 2, 2014, Ronald Reed died at age 92. And then the shock came. His estate was worth nearly $8 million. No one suspected. Not friends, not neighbors, not coworkers. He donated $4.8 million to Brattleboro Memorial Hospital, the largest gift in its history, funding modernization and creating the Ronald Reed Pavilion. He gave $1.2 million to Brooks Memorial Library, also their largest donation ever, invested to provide perpetual income for the community. The rest went to stepchildren, caregivers, friends, and local causes. The lesson? Wealth is not about a high salary. It's about discipline, aggressive saving, investing in simple, understandable businesses, reinvesting dividends, and letting compound interest work quietly over decades. Having patience, practicing frugality, and giving time. That is how a janitor, not a Wall Street investor or some corporate CEO, became a multi-millionaire. It's 1995. Imagine a woman named Sarah. No inheritance, no extraordinary luck, no special advantage. Just an ordinary person. No extra money, no financial cushion, only responsibility. She walks into a Walmart store to begin her job as a pharmacy technician. The blue uniform feels too new. The name badge that says Sarah feels heavier emotionally than physically. Her wage? Exactly $12 per hour. Working 40 hours per week. That meant about $1,920 gross per month. After federal taxes, state taxes, basic health insurance deductions, and small retirement contributions, she took home roughly $1,400 to $1,500. Just enough to survive. Not enough to make mistakes. Every day at 5 a.m., her alarm rang in the dark. She woke before the sun. The apartment was small, quiet, simple. Breakfast was almost always the same. White toast with cheap margarine. Maybe a boiled egg if there were any left. A glass of powdered milk mixed with water. No fancy coffee, no fresh juice. She caught a crowded bus. 45 minutes standing, sometimes longer if it was delayed. She arrived at the store, went to her locker room, put on the blue uniform, tied her hair back, clipped on her badge. Took a breath and walked to the pharmacy counter. Her shift started at 7 a.m. Stacks of prescriptions, complicated names, dosages that could not be wrong. One mistake could be serious. She checked everything twice, counted pills, sealed plastic bags, attached labels. Take one in the morning with food, one a night before bed. Don't forget, okay? In the line, there was pain, anxiety, mothers worried about sick children, elderly customers confused by multiple medications. Sometimes an 8-hour shift turned into 10. Her feet swelled inside inexpensive sneakers. Her back ached. But she smiled. Because for many people on that line, those affordable generic medications were their only option. With her tight paycheck, Sarah shopped at Walmart using her 10% employee discount. Rent for her small one-bedroom apartment was about $550. Utilities were basic: electricity, water, a landline phone. She packed leftovers for lunch to save $4 or $5. Every spare dollar went into a small jar at home. She didn't just want to survive. She wanted security. Then came the turning point. Walmart's employee stock purchase plan. Employees could buy company stock at up to 15% discount, deducted automatically from their paycheck. Sarah saw something others ignored. Packed carts, new stores opening, constant growth. She thought, I see this growing every single day. Why not invest in what I understand? She started with 5% of her paycheck, $70, $80, $100 per month. Not impressive, but consistent. When dividends came, she reinvested them quietly. While she counted pills, her money began counting for her. 1995 became 2000. The stock rose. Stock splits multiplied her shares. Her small investments grew to $20,000, then $30,000. She didn't sell. She kept buying. 2000 became 2005. Global expansion, early e-commerce growth. Compounding began working powerfully. $30,000 became $200,000, then $300,000. She was still at the same counter, still greeting the same regular customers. But internally, something was changing. She was building freedom. 2005 became 2010. Her investments approached $1 million. She could have stopped. She didn't. She bought a modest home, 3 bedrooms, quiet neighborhood, nothing extravagant. She kept her habits the same because she never wanted to impress anyone. She wanted stability. 2010 became 2015, over $1.5 million. 2015 became 2020, nearly $2.5 million. 2020 became 2025, $3.2 million. Built from small monthly investments. No shortcuts, no lottery, just discipline. Now, in 2026, Sarah still wakes up early. She may drive a reliable car now, but she still wears the blue uniform. Still works as a pharmacy technician. Her hourly wage is higher today, but what truly changed is security. She could quit tomorrow. Dividends alone could provide her with over $100,000 per year. She could travel the world, but she chooses to continue. Because money buys freedom, but it doesn't buy purpose. She remembers counting coins. She remembers her first 5-figure statement. She remembers customers thanking her. Those moments matter more than the numbers. She never chased fast wealth. She invested in what she understood. Consistently. Patiently. Today, she tells younger coworkers, save a little bit each month, invest in what you understand. Her story proves something simple. Small investments plus time plus discipline equal financial freedom. $12 per hour in 1995 became $3.2 million. Not because of luck, but because of habits. Sarah didn't know she would become a millionaire. She just kept going. And maybe you don't know where you'll be in 20 or 30 years either. But small, consistent steps can take you further than you imagine.